Good evening. Get to find your way in the dark up here. I was starting to talk into this. There's no microphone there. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. This is a real opportunity to take advantage of a unique chance to actually decide and design the park and the 84 acres that you would like to see. I've been asked, why are we doing this? What's the point of this 84 acres? You know, we live in today, but you've got to think of tomorrow. If you're going to be in government, and you've got some aldermen here. Well, I know it's dark, nobody will see you. All the aldermen, raise your hand. Anyway, we got 4 or 5 aldermen here. Karen Godfrey's here, Beverly Oliver's here, Jim Martin somewhere here, Chip Wilbanks is here. Those are the ones I've seen. Did I miss one? Anyway, they want to take part in all this too. And like I say, it's a unique opportunity to design something for the future. The idea behind this is to have a regional park that will draw people from Atlanta to Dallas, from St. Louis to New Orleans to come to Clinton, to stay here and spend their money here. So what's that unique thing that makes them do that? What brings them here to do that? And it's got to be something really different, innovative, something that nobody else has. So the board was given 2 options. They were given an option that was very nature oriented, and they were given an option that wasn't so nature oriented. Because they really decided they didn't want a Six Flags over Clinton type environment. Okay, so they went with the board voted to go with the nature oriented company, which is Native Habitat. And they're here too, but in the dark. So if I would raise your hand so nobody can see you, and we'll know where you are. And they're going to take you through this process. And this looks like it's going to be a lot of fun for the next couple of hours. It's going to be a short talk they're going to give you. And then you're going to go through putting your puzzle pieces together to build your park. The idea is to show you that you can't have everything. And also to show you there needs to be a logic of why you put things next to each other. So as you go through this process, you know, have some fun with it and really get down to the brass tacks of what you would like to see. And I've never done this before. I've never seen it done. Kirk will be coming up here in a moment to talk about it and explain it. I guess somehow they're going to gather all this information. And then over a period of time, they're going to work the magic and then they'll come back. And then we'll all get together again. I believe there's going to be an opportunity, Marley, for people to do this online. She leave? Anyway, so if you have friends, you tell them about this experience at church or in your bicycling groups or your walking groups, and they say, John, I wish I'd come. We'll tell you how you can tell them to get online and contribute to this whole process. They've got boards, I'm sure you've all seen back here. These great boards where you can decide what you want there and what you'd like to see. So this is a real opportunity, literally, to start from scratch and make a great project. So this will be a lot of fun for us. Kirk's over here going to be their spokesman for tonight, and he's going to take us through the whole process. Again, thank y'all for coming.
I was sitting there thinking a combination of it being dark, and me being short, you probably can't see me at all. So that's this voice speaking to you in the wilderness. Thank you, Mayor. Well, welcome. Thanks y'all for turning out. Stephanie's going to operate the slides here and walk you through a process. I'm Kurt Culbertson. I'm principal in charge of the effort on behalf of Design Workshops. Stephanie Kelly that you see here is the project manager. Robert Poor and Rob Anders are from Native Habitats here in Jackson. They are our partners in this effort. Ahmad and our office is helping with a lot of graphics as Laura and Olha. So that's the cast of characters that are involved in this effort as you see us roaming around this evening. And Stephanie is going to walk you through a process. Everybody got their cell phone. I saw many of you on them. Everybody got a cell phone handy, if you will. We're going to test this out, but if you go on your phone, if you'll go to www.menti.com, right, and enter this code when it pops up, or if you're really clever and you know how to use a QR code, you can take a picture of that and the survey will pop up. Yeah. Well, this is a pretty simple question. How are you liking Mentimeter so far? Yes or no? And you see, 8 of you like it, 4 of you not so crazy. 12 of us doing better. Okay,
All right.
see how that's working? So we're gonna ask you a couple of questions over the course of the evening, and we're gonna use this technique. So if you keep your phone handy, we can move through these questions pretty quick. Okay, everybody rolling? So as the mayor mentioned, we're here to talk about the 84-acre destination park. So we'll explain a little bit what we mean by the term destination park. What we want to do is give you some background on the project and the context. Rob is going to explain the site conditions, talk about some of the interpretive themes that are possible out here, because in our conversation with council, with focus groups we've had, there's been a lot of discussion about the importance of education as a possibility in the park and some potential programming ideas, which is really the core of the exercise tonight. So a bit of a background, as the mayor mentioned, the opportunity occurred to be able to acquire this 84 acres. Next slide. And really the notion is the idea of a destination park. So you can think, we talk in park planning, sometimes there's a neighborhood park, that may be a small park that's within walking distance of your house. Sometimes there's a community park, the sports park with all those ball fields and so forth really serves the entire community. Destination park can be like that, serving all of the people of Clinton, but it also may be even more attractive than that. It may draw people from around the region, maybe even around the country. And so the idea is really to create something that is, as we've said, an unforgettable outdoor adventure experience, a nature experience, immersion in nature, and has a recreational component to it. And really trying to create something that's unforgettable that can serve the community, but also regionally and visitors as well. And some of the things that might consist of, there may be iconic features. You maybe saw on some of these boards, bird houses and tree houses and play structures and so forth that are really memorable kinds of things. It can be active and passive. So it may simply be trails through the woods, walking trails through the trees, enjoying the native habitat and enjoying the quiet. On 84 acres, there's room for other things. So there may be interpretive play and exploration, as we mentioned, education, and we'll talk about that some more. There may be nature-based programs. We'll talk in a moment about some of the habitat, the vegetation that occurs on site, and how we can celebrate the biodiversity of the site, and opportunities for wellness and fitness, and certainly public health is a component of parks as well. Next slide. So we've worked with council and run this by some folks in focus groups, and the vision statement, if you will, is pretty much, you can read it here if I'm not standing in front of you, but the idea is really to create a destination park that's a regional draw, celebrating the area's history, ecology, and culture with imaginative and innovative expressions, to maintain the native character and habitat of the site in a low impact, harmonistic way. But also it's conceived as an economic impetus for the area. The idea that it's something that will really draw visitors community and has an economic development component. And we'll talk about this more in our next meeting with you, but the idea that it would be funded and managed and maintained through public-private joint ventures. So it's not necessarily all funded with public dollars, but there may be partners, there may be lease arrangements or for-profit sector that partners with the city in order to make some of these things happen. But you can see here the idea of a canopy walk, the idea that you could take a walk, and these can even be wheelchair accessible. There's one of these now at the Atlanta Botanical Gardens where you can get up in the canopy of the trees. My granddog, a beagle, would love to get up in the canopy of the trees with the squirrels, but you can get up there and walk or roll, if you will, through the canopy of the trees. There may be disc golf. You see in the upper right picture, that's the kind of activity, it's one of the fastest growing sports in the United States. There could be opportunities for glamping, which is what you call glamorous camping. and it may be an opportunity for visitors on the Trace to stop and stay in Clinton, or it may be something you take a weekend getaway with your significant other, or it might even be things like tree houses, which could be a Boy Scout or Girl Scout group or some other youth organization where the kids can be out in nature. So it can be a whole variety of things that we might dream of. The mission statement that we've called it, which is zeroing a little bit further, as we say, is really to reflect the history, culture, and ecology and the context of Clinton and the park itself, to focus on the natural attributes. And you'll see as we go into this further tonight, is really focus on site suitability, because there are some components that Rob will talk in a minute that may influence where things will happen. To focus on community engaged outcomes. That's why you're here. That's why the questions and presentations that you'll see tonight will go online in the next week or so that other people in the community, students of the college and so forth, can respond and offer their input. We will be doing a little bit of brainstorming tonight, and all of the ideas that you'll see tonight have been what we call benchmarked against other possibilities, right? So if we want to have a mountain biking course, how much land you need for a mountain biking course? We know, because we've looked at some of the better mountain biking courses around the country. We know how much room you need for disc golf. We know how much room you need for a venture playground and so forth. So these are not random sizes. They're really kinds of facilities and the sizing and quality of facilities that would put Clinton on the map, literally and figuratively, with the best kind of facilities in the state, if not the region. So that's what we've tried to do with what we're talking about tonight, is benchmark against some of those other opportunities. Next slide. So we're going through this process. This fall, we've been, and into November now, we've been setting the stage and doing site analysis, gathering the kind of information you'll see tonight. We are into the visioning phase. So we've started that, in fact, already, which is to have this first stakeholder engagement and really be affirming this vision, mission, and goals, and talking about some of these programming ideas. We will be back in the spring with a series of plan alternatives based on the input we get from you tonight and we get from the survey. And then by early summer, finalizing the vision plan. So this exercise right now is not about getting yet to detailed design and getting ready to build something. It's getting to a plan that the community is comfortable with, getting an understanding of what the potential cost of implementing it will be. And once we understand that and have worked through the financing related issues, then we can proceed with the construction of the park. And that might occur over time and in phases based on the availability of funds and partners. Okay. So it's 84 acres, as we've said. The goal is really to create something that's a city, a regional, even a national designation. When you see, and Rob talks to you about the property, it was formerly timbered, formerly pasture land. It does contain some ephemeral streams, and by ephemeral, I mean there's not necessarily always water running through them. But when we do have major rain events and so forth, there can be flooding on the site. There certainly will be water running, which is an attribute we could in fact take advantage of. There's rolling topography. It's certainly not flat ground. And the goal is really to get to a destination or adventure park and to get to a conceptual master plan. Okay. Driving the wrong direction. So project context, talk about that a bit. And again, you'll see scattered through here images of the kinds of things that might be developed on property. To this gentleman's point about the Airstream, one of the things we are looking at and studying, and we've been talking to the folks at the Visitor Center, is really understanding that Clinton, Jackson and Clinton in particular, is located really on two corridors. One is the natural trace from Nashville down to South Mississippi, or you might say all the way down to New Orleans, and there are travelers up and down the trace. And there's opportunity, if you will, to capture part of that market from a north-south direction. With some of the research we're doing now is to understand what are the alternative destinations along that trace. How long does somebody typically drive in their Airstream or their Winnebago or look to camp again? And what are the competitive attractions, if you will, along that corridor to make sure that we match or exceed those expectations. East-west, what's it like driving from Atlanta to Dallas, if you will, or Birmingham to Dallas, and how do you compete for other alternatives there? What are the kinds of opportunities for recreation if I want to have a great weekend in the Jackson metro area? How long will people typically drive for a weekend, and what would make this truly a regional attraction, right? What, what's available in the county context, and then really thinking about how this property fits within the context of the city as a whole. So you can see the 84 acres. It's just south of the Morrison Heights Baptist Church. It sits along the edge of the interstate. It sits just north of Buddy Butts Park, right? And you can get a sense of where it sits relative to the college and downtown. It's generally a triangle. That little corner that's clipped in the lower right-hand corner. That's actually land of Mississippi College that comes up and abuts the 84 acres. And you can see from this image, there's a power line easement that goes through the midst of it, which creates some challenges, but also I think some opportunities, as you'll see. Next slide. You can see here, the red triangle is the approximate boundary of the park, right? You see in purple, the lands of Mississippi College. That contains the remains, if we will, the traces, if you will, of Camp Clinton, and we'll talk in a minute about what Clinton is and was. For those of you who may not know, it sits close to Buddy Butts Park, which contains the Mississippi River Basin model, and you may have seen on the boards some photographs of that basin model. One of the things that I mentioned as we're talking about education is it possible to tell stories, to teach stories, not just about the ecology of this particular site and history of the site, but is this the place that people could come learn about Camp Clinton, learn about the Mississippi River Basin model? And then you can see here in blue, this is the floodplain of the creek that passes through the property, right? And does create some constraints and opportunities for us there, right? And you can see the green line, which is the Natchez Trace. This is a map from the city's comprehensive plan, right? And it shows existing bike lanes and proposed bike lanes, right? One of which, and these colors bleed out a little bit, there is a proposed bike lane that basically runs down this creek and connects through the site. And so one of the things we might think about is this begins to start to create that citywide bike trail that starts to connect the southern portion of the city together. So that's one of the opportunities and things that can be accomplished by development of this park. One of the things we will need to talk about tonight and want you to consider is how do we get access to the park, right? You have the frontage road on the interstate. You'll see number one. It crosses, or there's a potential opportunity to cross as an extension of that frontage road, but it will require agreement with the apartment complex to be able to cross the edge of their property, we believe. The other option is to try to seek an easement across the private property that you see here, right? This alignment. There's an existing power line easement, and that's largely both City of Clinton and some City of Jackson land. We could come down the power line easement, right? Could be possible to come, perhaps reach some kind of agreement with the City of Jackson to come through Buddy Butts Park. This little rectangle of land that you see here, some of that land is owned by the City of Jackson. Some of that land, like where the old sewer treatment ponds are, is owned by the City of Clinton. So it may be possible to come through there. And we've had some preliminary conversations with Mississippi College, no agreement or no specific discussion about things yet, but the possibility that you could perhaps come down a utility line easement on the Mississippi College land. So as we see it, there are at least 5 possibilities to connect together. Mississippi College, as I mentioned, I know we have not to make judgments here, but we have a somewhat older age cohort, which is fine with me, but we have talked to Mississippi College and they are interested in the idea of the park containing things that would be attractive to their students or to prospective students. You know, you may know they have the Choctaw Trails. Their running course is on this property. They've actually held national championship cross-country meets on this land, and they're interested in possibly expanding the trail running onto this property or connecting in some way. They know that their students are interested in mountain biking. They know their students are interested in disc golf. You can imagine the kinds of things that 18 to 21, 22 years old are interested in. And so that's part of, if you will, the economic development potential here is the ability to strengthen the attractiveness of the college and the attractiveness of Clinton to that older generation. Okay. So take a poll. Know how to do that now. When you think about it, which of these options, just for discussion purposes, which of these options do you think are most appealing to you as a way to get into the property? You like the idea of the I-20 frontage road, maybe negotiating an easement across the private property to the west, accessing on the power line easement, or discussions with Buddy Butts Park or with Mississippi College land. Which of those seems to be most promising or most appealing to you if you think about how you might access the property? See how that works? I think we've got about 25 people here, so we'll give it a few more minutes. Okay. All right. Okay, Rob?
Usually when I have a microphone, I'm singing, so I try not to break the song. But I'll tell you a little bit, now that Kurt's given you the overview of the broader context, talk a little bit more about the conditions actually on the site. So first time we set foot on the site, I noticed some peculiar things. A loblolly pine growing next to a willow tree, loblolly pine or a upland hickory growing next to a sycamore. A few oddities that I don't normally see in natural systems. And that kind of raised the question is what's happened on this land before that we don't know about, besides what's actually out here. So we did a little digging as far back in history as we could. There's not a whole lot of historical records of this site since it is, you know, sort of out of the main part of Clinton. But you see back in the early 60s when they started planning for the I-20 corridor, we've got some aerial photos. Up in 1963, you see the majority of the site, this sort of tan area is pasture land, and then the darker areas are hardwood forest. There are actually three streams that come from the northeast and run across the site in this direction. So you see them starting to put in the interstate in 68. Go ahead. Back one. Very little change in the land cover up through the 70s. Still pasture land on 60% of the site and hardwood forest on the rest of the site. So advance one slide and it shows more or less present day conditions. Right beneath the 84-acre park site label is a pine plantation that we believe has been there for probably 25 years. We don't have any photography in that intervening period, so we're not sure. But the trees are about 14 to 16 inches in diameter. They've been thinned out at one point, and there are understory trees coming up underneath them. In addition to the power line easement that runs east-west, there's one that runs north-south through the center of that pine plantation. And over to the left of the pine plantation, down in the bottomland, is a remnant bottomland hardwood forest. However, it has been highly disturbed. I believe in 2004, based on aerial photography, it was pretty much clear cut. It's invaded by it's dominated at this point by Chinese tallow tree, but there are some remnant and emerging native trees that are starting to overtake those tallows at the moment. Over on the right-hand side of the north-south power line easement, Was also pine plantation up until about 2016, when most of it was logged. Say about 60% of it was logged, and it's naturally regenerating into pines and sweet gums and oaks now. Go ahead. So just some images of the site, some low floodplain areas, some cool streams, interesting banks and cool vegetation. So we've got basically 4 different habitat types that we've identified out there. Grasslands, which are comprised of the power line easements, bottomland hardwood forests down on the yellow side, got upland mesic or moderately moist upland deciduous forest, and then pine plantation, which is sort of the central blob area. So that's a look down. This is actually not on site, but this is a look from the highest point near the site, looking toward the west, toward the big energy substation that's on Spring Ridge Road. And our property is sort of the woodland to the right there. So sort of just a representative section showing the sort of what the topography out there is. It may be a little exaggerated. There's not quite that much slope, but there is a fair amount of slope on a portion of the site. So the habitats that I mentioned earlier, the mesic upland forest, there's the power line with the grasslands, bottomland hardwood forest, and remnant pine plantations. All of these are hosts to these critters and plants. I've seen white-tailed deer. I haven't seen a fox, but I've seen Gulf fritillary butterflies, seen tree frogs, a lot of this Chinese tallow tree, cardinal flowers. So lots of cool, interesting natural things to see on site. This is a slope analysis. Aside from the polygon, the red polygon that outlines the site, the more red areas are the steeper areas, and the more green are the more flat areas. So you see down here, this bottomland area, so it's real flat, and then we start to slope into the upland here, and it's a little steeper on this section. So we think that slope is actually a pretty good opportunity for some of the programming elements that have been proposed to date, such as canopy walks, etc., that allow those to be accessible. Somebody can roll off at one elevation and then project off the slope on a level boardwalk through the forest. So in looking at all of this, looking at the site, they've taken all these factors, the erodibility of the soil, different habitat types, the hydrology, the flooding is a big one, land ownerships and easements and slopes. Looking at those all in conjunction leaves us a portion of the park, that's in this patch area right here, that we're limited on what we can do in those areas. That's the floodplain. So we can build raised things that are above the flood elevation. We can put in things such as disc golf or trails, things that won't be impacted by flooding, but we can't put anything that would obstruct the flow of the water in those areas. So when we get to the chip game later, y'all are gonna have to think through that and what actually goes in those spots.
Show us where that hatching is. I cannot see that.
Yeah, it is hard to see. It's primarily from here over.
Oh, all of that.
But we also show the power line easements, because you can have trails and such across the power line easement, but you can't build a building or any kind of structure. In the
Okay. Yeah, but that's very good. But eventually, we're gonna go to Tesla energy, so the power lines are gonna go. Power lines are gonna go.
Well, you might be right, but I think all of us in this room might be on gone, but their energy is very interested in their 500,000 volt power line and substation at the moment, but you're right.
Came from the front, would it be effective to the property where there is three abandoned built structures?
So if you came across here, is that what you're saying? It's a longer lead. What you can't see on this map is there's a stream that comes here, a stream that comes here. So you would have to sort of bridge in 2 spots to get over it. Not that it couldn't be done. But that's just a puzzle piece. Alright. Okay,
You're
so
saying
just,
it would be a little bit harder to make an access road there than it would be coming in off the Spring Branch.
we believe, because those three streams are. The two primary streams converge in the midst of the park and then they become one, and so you will only have to bridge one. Of course, you have to get across the floodplain area in general, but you're not bridging two streams. In a more southerly location. Right.
Or something.
Yeah, the bridges would have to be big enough to
Would
pass.
have to really-
Do those bridges, earlier you had access coming off the power line, from Spring Ridge.
The creeks
Those
cross,
creeks cross there,
the
too.
creek
You
cross.
still have to be bridged there.
yeah, you still have to have a bridge no matter what, but it's just a matter of number, less bridges on the south. And then more. So bigger takeaway is just, the slopes that are on the site, although a large portion of the site is fairly flat, it's in the floodplain, the slopes that we do have offer some opportunity for accessible elements that project off those slopes and get people in the canopy or into a tree house or into something that they normally couldn't get access to. Definitely want to maintain and enhance the biodiversity out there, improve water quality, maintain water quality. There are some, you might not think it, I think Barry Hanna, who's from Clinton, the writer, said in Mississippi, it's difficult to achieve a vista. Which is true, but there are some cool vistas, there's some cool views out there. Right? What's that? Not that close. Okay, I don't know where I lost you on that, but there are some interesting views out there. Looking down those power line corridors. So we want to protect those or enhance. We also want to protect and utilize the existing canopy cover. And sorry, I'm not used to the microphone deal. Because there's a history of agriculture on the site and other historical elements, we want to sort of give a nod to those. And we want to be looking at the neighborhood and the regional access and services for the site.
So you'll hear us talk about interpretive things, right? The idea that to educate people about all of the site factors, the ecology, the vegetation that Rob was talking about. There's some other themes that are potential possibilities. Next slide. How many of you are familiar with Camp Clinton? You've heard about it, at least? A few hands going up. If you don't know, it was a site of a World War II prisoner of war camp. There were 425,000 prisoners of war held in the United States. 3,400 of those were housed in Camp Clinton. Camp Clinton is actually on Mississippi College land adjacent to the site. Clinton has always been a place for high-class people, so this is where they sent the high-ranking German officers. Actually, the officer that oversaw Paris when the Germans captured Paris was actually sent to Clinton. There were it's an interesting tale about the folks that were here generally for multiple years. They had a library, canteen, sports, and so forth. So quite a story to be told about the Camp Clinton experience. And this may be a site where this can be part of the educational story that can be told with signage and so forth on the site within the park. Okay. So another one of our polls. I'm going to let Stephanie ask these questions.
This is just a fun question. How much were the POWs paid to build the model, the Mississippi River Basin model? Was it 80 cents per hour, 80 cents per day, or 80 cents per week? $1943 or cents. An overwhelming majority. Oh, we got one.
You gonna tell us the answer?
The answer is the one that said 80 cents per day. And I'm sorry, there's no award for this, but thank you. We got one more.
And we have another question.
One final fast fact, Camp Clinton trivia. The prisoner of wars helped to build a working model of the Mississippi River Basin. How big is that model of the Mississippi River Basin? 1 square yard, 1 square acre, or 1 square mile?
The Mississippi River model, you know, the Great Flood of 1927, 1943, the Corps of Engineers had the prisoners at Camp Clinton build a scale model of the Mississippi River Basin on what is now Butts Park, right? So how big is that model? How many of you have seen it? Fair number, maybe half of you, right? Is it square mile, square acre, or square yard? Square acre, yeah, 212 feet by 212 feet.
There you go. Well, is all answers in 1 square mile? Good job. You guys know your stuff.
Pretty remarkable. So these are the kinds of things we were talking about, the Mississippi River Basin model, as I said, the Great Flood of 1927. The German and Italian POWs actually were put to work building a 1 square mile working model of the Mississippi River here in Clinton. And at its peak, there were 5,000 visitors a year that come to see that model. And so it's a kind of example of a kind of interpretive opportunity, a regional attraction to be able to tell the story of Camp Clinton, to be able to tell the story of the scale model, to have some of the recreational activities that we've talked about, is a real opportunity to draw visitors to Clinton, who may someday either spend their money here or they may choose to call this home. So these are the kinds of things we want to try to bring together around this site. Next slide. Certainly the Natchez Trace, you're familiar with that, but thinking about that not just as an opportunity to attract visitors along the trace to Clinton, but also thinking about that as an interpretive theme, a story that can be told within the park. Next slide. And then Rob was talking about the importance of the power line, the native vegetation that occurs there now. We've had conversations with the state Master Gardeners program, which is run out of Mississippi State, and their interest in gardening here on the site. We've also talked of the Master Naturalist program at Mississippi State and the potential for some of the kind of environmental opportunities we've talked about. One of the things they in fact suggested was the possibility of the power line becoming a pollinator garden, which sounds fancy, but it's really the idea that it's planting that power line easement with vegetation that's attractive to monarch butterflies. Mississippi is on the flyway for, you can see in this diagram here in the lower middle, it's on the migration route, significantly on the migration route for monarch butterflies into Mexico. And so the goal among naturalists throughout the country is to really create pollinator gardens that provide places, stopover for butterflies and things of that sort. So that's a way to take the power line, which may not be seen as an asset. It could be combined with trails and to create a pollinator garden along the length of it, the power line easement, that could really be an attraction in terms of wildlife and so forth. Okay. Rob was talking about the history of the site, that the idea that in '63, the upland forest was cleared for pasture. The power lines were then cut to make room for a pine plantation. The bottomland hardwood forest was logged, and some of the pine plantation has been logged, but that landscape, that bottomland upland forest can come back fairly quickly, as can the bottomland forest, and you can get the kind of diverse landscape and the kind of wildlife and bird life that you see in some of these photos. So again, that's a potential to tell the story about the ecology and a little bit about the evolution of the landscape of this site over time. We've reached out to them as well, yeah. So Audubon and some of those groups would certainly be of interest, yes. Okay. So now to the core of the question tonight, okay? Let's talk about programming. And programming, that's sort of design speak, but that's a fancy name for what's the stuff that's going to go in the park. Okay, so when we say, think about programming, what kind of things would you like to see in the park? What kind of activity? What kind of improvements, okay? And in our discussions, there've been a whole range of things that's been discussed. I mentioned the idea of an adventure course. It could be a zip line, it could be a ropes course. Oftentimes there are leadership development programs around those kinds of things. There could be nature play. Nature play is something, you know, there's a lot of writing now, research about the idea of no child left in the woods, that children don't get to go out and play in the woods anymore, right? They get to play in a fixed playground, you know, with plastic and metal play equipment, but they don't get to jump and climb over logs and so forth. So the opportunity for nature play, the canopy walk we've talked about, the pollinator meadow we mentioned, biking facilities. This gentleman was talking about the mountain biking in Butts Park. We know there's some mountain bike trails across the property now. You know, we need to get those mapped and understand them, but can that be opportunity to be further enhanced? Can there also be trails that aren't bike accessible, that are more natural and interpretive? The boardwalk you see here is the kind of thing that could go out through the floodplain area. Disc golf, increasing interest in that, opportunities for picnic areas and shelters, the RV and glamping we've talked about. This is actually a tree house that's covered with tree houses. So the opportunity to build something like that, we designed recently a park in Lafayette, Louisiana, and we had the Treehouse Master. Anybody seen the Treehouse Master TV show on NPR? We had him actually come and build a tree house in the park in Lafayette, Louisiana. There can be interactive elements. I think the fact that we're in a building for therapeutic recreation really speaks to the possibility that could be therapeutic recreation of all different kinds. There could be, I think, the opportunity for an accessible park, for wheelchair accessible playground, for sensory gardens for people that have impaired sight or whatever, right? So that could be an important part of it. And then the idea that some of the functions of a welcome center or community center might occur there. So a range of things, okay, could occur. Okay, so now we want you to take another question. Y'all are getting good at this. Okay. So when you think about the things that I just talked about, these opportunities, right? Ropes courses, zip line, canopy walk, mountain biking trails, multi-purpose trails, which would be more foot trails or hiking trails, disc golf, a climbing wall, a pond. In our focus groups, we said, wow, we need a water body. We need water-based recreation in Jackson, a wedding event, an event venue. It's a very beautiful piece of property. Can that be one of the opportunities, a beautiful place to get for weddings, for community gathering, for arts and interpretive programs? An arboretum, it's a fancy name for a collection of trees, of native trees, non-native trees. Learn about that. The adventure playground. Which of these things appeal to you? This is a pick your top 4. We're going to find out in a minute how much of this actually fits on the site. But which of these things appeal to you, and which of them appeal to you the most? Good question. We don't have a concert venue, but you're going to find out when we play the chip game in a minute. We actually have blank chips. So if there's something like, hey, I've got a concert venue, someone else had another idea. If there's something that's not on this list, let's hear about it, right? And we can talk about that as we move forward. Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. You know, and actually we talk about art and interpretive elements, but you know, there could be different kinds of art education programs. It doesn't just have to be art you look at. There could be art activities that occur within the park, for example. You know what, we're working on the botanical garden in Charlotte right now. There's a discussion about a concert venue, like this lady suggested. There's a discussion about a portion of those botanical gardens becoming a sculpture garden. That's really a regional draw. I mean, Mississippi is a place with a lot of very good artists, right? And so could this become a regional center for the arts in Mississippi in some way? So these are as much as anything else, these are things to get your juices flowing and get your ideas, get you thinking about. And so all of those kinds of ideas, like you're talking about, the more the merrier. We're just gonna have to see what all fits and how it all fits together. Thank you. anything on that list that you don't like, you say, oh, man, that's not appealing to me. I don't know if I want to see one of those things, right? And if there isn't, that's okay, but we figure if we're gonna ask you what we like, we ought to ask you what you don't like, right? Climbing wall, okay. Canopy walk, maybe. Okay? So, not everybody's gonna be on the same page, and there may be, different kinds of things. Stephanie's working on James Park outside of Charleston right now, for example. It has a very interesting and very successful climbing program, climbing walls of different sizes for different ages, all the way down to the little kids, maybe a wall about 8 feet high. So there are a lot of things that could make their way here or not make their way here. Okay. Other thoughts?
Oops.
So, you good? Okay, so a couple of things that came away from the focus groups, and we did assemble a series of focus groups about nature and environment, about some of the recreational activities, mobility, biking, and so forth, about potential strategic partners. We talked to city staff, because city staff will need to maintain the park and may have issues and concerns we need to be aware of. There was a real interest in, as I said, in this idea of overnight stays in some form, about trail connections, understanding that there are trails in Butts Park, there are trails on the Mississippi College land, there's the trail that's called for in the comprehensive plan, that there's a potential for iconic elements, whether it's sculpture or tree houses or whatever. The water body really came up a number of times, and some of the opportunities for education we spoke about. Okay. And this was a quote: "We don't have a water option in Flint. It'd be nice to have a place where you could relax and look out over a pond or a lake, maybe with a small man-made beach." There were some technical concerns about safety and maintenance and road access. Next slide. People understanding how you tie to the Friends of the Mississippi River Basin. We talked about strategic partnerships, the old waterways experiment station in Butts Park. Really understanding how this park connects to other parks through the city. The best disc golf in the entire state. We had a strong disc golf component. Says there's really not a great disc golf course in the entire state. You know, disc golf, like regular golf, is typically 18 holes. And they said, there's a park in Cleveland that, they just took out the 18th hole, so now it's 17 holes. There's one here that's now 8 holes. That kind of stuff is going on. So it could be the opportunity to create a disc golf that's the best in the state, that brings people from all around, and the importance of biking in all of its many forms. And I like to say there's the spandex crowd, the fast bikers, they're mountain bikers, they're townies, they're little kids that are on push bikes and so forth. And so really thinking about opportunities for biking on the property. Okay. A lot of discussion from the visitor center staff about the importance of a high quality RV park in the area. They get off the road and wonder about where an RV park might go, and some of the challenges with that. Tent camping in conjunction with the RV park, and camping near a body of water. Again, the question of water comes forward. Okay. Camp Clinton, the Community Nature Center, and some of the potential connectivity there. Okay. Choctaw Trails and connectivity of Mississippi College, overnight stays again. Can you connect even the 84 acres of the Mississippi College and Butts Parks together as a comprehensive set of recreational opportunities? Okay. So now, shall I keep going, Steph?
Mhm.
We're going to take you to, moving forward, we're going to take you to these presentation and these survey questions will be online. So there will be opportunity, as the mayor was saying, for your neighbors and friends to be able to respond. And then we're going to take you in a moment, next slide, to what we call the chip game. Okay. So let's see if we can turn the lights up now. If anybody remember how we turned them down. You have in front of you a base, well, we're calling a base map. You have a map of the property. Okay, we're gonna turn you all into designers tonight. You ready?
Yes.
I know, I can tell you, bright-eyed and ready to roll. Okay, this is a map of the park. Okay, the red boundary is the park. You can see the interstate along this edge. The light blue area is what's called the 100-year floodplain. That means when you get a big storm like you had a couple of months ago, a month or so ago, that area in light blue is